Last week I needed to send my grandson some money. Not a loan, not an emergency, just a normal transfer. He sent back an @handle, no sentence, no hint, just the handle. And suddenly, I was staring at my phone, like it was asking me a trick question. 3 buttons sat there waiting. Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, all bright, all confident, all pretending this was straightforward. None offering guidance, none explaining the difference. Just 3 options implying that if this feels confusing, the problem must be you, not the design. That small moment captures something larger than a missed payment. It isn't confusion about money itself. It's confusion about pathways. The money hasn't changed, the roots have. And those roots now expect familiarity without ever formally introducing themselves to anyone. Writing a check once meant standing at a counter under fluorescent lights, filling out a line, signing your name, and handing it over. Slow, yes, but unmistakable. One method, one direction, one expectation. There was no doubt which action matched the situation or relationship involved. Now the assumption is speed. The assumption is familiarity. Someone sends a handle and waits, as if knowing which app to use is basic literacy. There's pressure there. You don't want to ask which one. You don't want to send it twice either. And you definitely don't want to explain later that the money vanished into the wrong account. That's the quiet tension. It's not dramatic fear. It's practical concern. One wrong tap and the money is gone, cleanly, and without ceremony or human intervention. No envelope, no stop payment, no teller to lean toward and say something feels off. These systems remove friction by design, and they succeed. They also remove the pause that once acted as a final checkpoint before money actually left your hands. Peer-to-peer payments didn't appear overnight. They arrived as fixes for ordinary problems. Checks were slow, transfers clunky, cash required coordination, so shortcuts were built. Zelle linked banks, Venmo wrapped payments socially. Cash App made transfers feel like texting. None of this was sold as risky. It was sold as easier. And it is easier, right, until ease reveals assumptions. The apps assume you know who you're paying. They assume names match faces. They assume mistakes are rare enough to be ignored. What changed quietly is where responsibility sits. It used to live with institutions. Now it lives with your thumb. The system works instantly, but only if you already know the rules. And those rules are rarely posted where decisions happen. So the annoyance builds, not anger, just irritation. You double-check spellings, you scan profile photos, you wonder why 3 services exist to solve the same problem in slightly different, incompatible ways, each expecting perfect certainty from casual actions. That's why the question isn't which app is best. It's which app fits this moment. Family, friends, someone barely known. Slowing down and matching the button to the relationship isn't drama. It's how the money ends up where you meant it to go. By the time most people bump into trouble with these apps, the mistake has already happened, not because they weren't careful, but because the 3 main options all present themselves as the same idea: send money, tap a name, done, while the real differences stay buried until something goes wrong. Those differences live in how money actually moves and what happens afterward, which isn't explained up front, because each app looks friendly and interchangeable, even though the rules underneath are very different. And by the time that matters, the decision has already been made and can't be pulled back. Start with Zelle, which isn't really an app in the usual sense, but a direct connection between banks, moving money within minutes, sometimes seconds, straight from one account to another. And that speed is the feature everyone advertises and the risk nobody highlights. With Zelle, there's no purchase protection and no room for second thoughts. Because if the money goes to the wrong person, the bank's position is simple. You authorized it, end of story, which makes it appropriate only for people you already know well and trust completely. Family members, longtime friends, or anyone you'd be comfortable handing cash to without asking for a receipt fit that category. Because Zelle behaves less like a payment app and more like a wire transfer, fast, final, and uninterested in context or explanations after the fact. Venmo works differently and behaves more like a wallet sitting on top of your bank account, owned by PayPal, where money can move quickly but often pauses inside Venmo first. And culturally, it's built for splitting things like dinners, tickets, and shared expenses. The social feed tells you how Venmo expects to be used, and the main risk isn't speed but visibility and confusion, with public profiles, similar names, and tiny differences like extra underscores, where you think you're paying one person and end up paying another instead. Venmo does offer limited protections in certain cases, but they aren't automatic or generous, which means attention still matters, especially when names look alike and the interface assumes familiarity, not verification, as the default state of mind when sending money. Then there's Cash App, which uses $cash tags instead of names and is especially popular with younger users and freelancers, offering fast transfers and a simple interface, while the real problem sits outside the app, in the flood of fake support accounts and impersonators. If something goes wrong and you search for help, you'll find plenty of people ready to assist you straight into losing more money, which is why the rule here is blunt. Never trust support through messages, ever, because real support doesn't reach out first. That's where the rule of thumb comes in: Zelle for family and people you fully trust, Venmo for friends and shared expenses, Cash App only when the other person insists on it, plus habits that apply everywhere: confirm the handle, send a small test amount, and turn on two-factor authentication. None of this is dramatic, it's procedural, because the systems aren't hostile, they're literal, doing exactly what they're told very quickly without interest in context. And once you accept that, it stops being a guessing game and becomes a checklist, which is easier to live with than surprises. At a certain point, it helps to flip the frame. The world didn't suddenly become reckless or chaotic. It just moved ahead without waiting for everyone to update their mental settings. That gap is where the unease comes from. Not danger everywhere, just systems moving faster than old assumptions. If this all feels familiar, that's because it is. We've been here before, just in different forms. Phone trees that never led to a person. Online banking that felt risky until it didn't. Dial-up tones that trained patience by force. None of those moments required brilliance to survive. They required adjustment, not panic, and that distinction matters. Each shift looked overwhelming until it became routine. This moment fits the same pattern. The tools changed faster than expectations, leaving people briefly unsure of footing, not because they lack ability, but because the rules quietly moved. The pressure today comes from how casual everything looks. Someone sends you a handle, no explanation, no context, just an expectation that you'll know which app to open and how confident to feel about it. That casualness can feel like a test you didn't sign up for. Especially when the consequences are real and the undo button doesn't exist. Money moves quickly, interfaces stay cheerful, responsibility lands on the user without much ceremony. That mismatch between tone and consequence is what makes the moment feel heavier than it should. The useful shift is realizing you're allowed to set boundaries here. You don't have to match someone else's default. You don't have to rush because their phone is already in their hand. You get to decide which app makes sense for which relationship. That's not being difficult, that's being accurate. Family and people you fully trust belong in one category. Friends and shared expenses belong in another. Situations where the other person only uses one app belong in a third. Clear categories remove unnecessary noise. Once those categories settle in, you're no longer choosing between brands. You're choosing between levels of trust. That mental shift simplifies decisions and lowers tension. The transaction becomes predictable again, even if the technology underneath it remains fast and invisible. That's where confidence comes back, not the loud kind, the quiet kind that says there's a reason behind the choice. Confirming a handle stops feeling awkward. Sending a small test amount stops feeling paranoid. Turning on two-factor authentication starts to feel routine. There's also relief in realizing you don't have to master everything. You don't need every update or warning. A short playbook covers most situations. These systems aren't targeting anyone personally. They're indifferent. They do exactly what they're told, quickly, for everyone. Once you see that, the emotional charge drains away. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling rushed. Guessing is replaced with a checklist, and checklists are calmer places to stand. Decisions feel deliberate instead of reactive, even when the process stays digital. So if the modern world feels loud at times, remember this part is manageable. It's procedural, not personal. Learn the rules once, use them calmly, then get on with the rest of your day.